Hello everyone, welcome back to another Project Gladiator weather forecast. Today I'm going to be covering the weather for June 10th of 2023. Currently this is going to be the start of our very long week with severe weather. I'm expecting tons of severe weather later in the week as the jet stream continues to increase, and I'll show you that on the pivotal weather models. But currently we have an enhanced risk for parts of Louisiana into parts of Arkansas, but mostly in eastern, northeastern Texas, as well as a kind of a big slight risk that extends all the way into Mississippi, as well as a marginal threat which extends all the way into Alabama. Parts of Alabama extends all the way north to this weird lobe into parts of Nebraska, majority of Kansas, Colorado, northern Oklahoma, and extends all the way into Mexico on the western side of Texas. So we got a kind of weird looking marginal threat pattern. But as for our tornado threats, we don't really have all that much of a very strong tornado threat that we're expecting probably later this week. This is only the beginning. We do have a 5% tornado threat for the central area of that enhanced risk area. We do have a 30% wind threat with a hatch significant threat on it, with a 5% for that slight risk area, with a 15% for that slight risk area, and a 5% for that marginal threat area. So our hail threat, we have a hatch significant threat for that enhanced risk area on a 30%, as well as a 15% for the slight risk area, or the majority of it, as well as a 5% for the marginal threat area. Taking a look at the pivotal weather models, you can notice that the subtropical jet isn't as strong as it is forecasted to be later on this week. You can see around the time storm begins to develop in the enhanced risk area, it is mostly around the 30 knots. Not really all that much in the 40 knots, probably going to stay around the 30 knots for now. But because of how weak the subtropical jet is, I mean, it will provide sufficient wind shear for our significant hail threat, as well as our significant wind threat, and definitely some wind shear for our 5% tornado threat. But because of how overall weak the subtropical jet is right now, the tornado threat isn't going to be as high as it could possibly get later on this week. As you can see going forward, this subtropical jet with the values in the mid-level flow around the 60 knots, mid 60 knots, possibly even higher, depending on the models tomorrow. This is going to really bring an increase of severe weather later on this week, and really supply strong tornado threats, probably much higher than we're going to see today. So that's mostly our main triggers for our severe weather development for today. Taking a look at our dew points, I'm going to stay mostly focused on the enhanced risk area for now, and mostly in the Texas region, not really focused on the marginal threat further up north. But taking a look at eastern Texas for now, you can see that we have dew points that are in the mid 70s. That is really extreme humidity and going to provide tons of instability depending on our lapse rates. By the time storms begin to develop, we have dew points that are in the upper 60s to low 70s, possibly the mid 70s. That is going to be tons of instability and really allow for large hail, very damaging outflow gusts, and a very good possibility for tornadoes today. Taking a look at our lapse rates again, still focusing on the eastern Texas area. Keep in mind the intense amount of humidity that we had with those dew points in the mid 70s. We have lapse rates that are reaching the 7s to 8s, the weak 8s to upper 7s. This is going to really boost up instability a lot, possibly get it up to the mid 3000s, possibly even higher. This is going to provide tons of instability, and we'll take a look at this take a look at that in a second. But I think lapse rates also contribute to the damaging wind threat. So these very strong lapse rates are going to be a very strong fueling factor for tons of instability along with the dew points. Taking a look at the instability off the bat, we already have tons of instability. We have values that are already being depicted in the upper 4,000s and even in the 5,000s in some very isolated areas. I don't think 5,000s are really going to be all that realistic today because there's such a small tiny area. I don't think lapse rates are going to support 5,000s, but along the coast we may be able to see a little bit of a weak 5,000, definitely 4,000s as there is deeper moisture, but I'm not sure about Cape or lapse rates. So but let's continue forward. Let's look at around storm development time. You can see around storm development time, before those outflow boundaries develop around here, you can see that we have tons of instability too. Maybe a little bit less compared to what we saw just a few seconds ago, but it's definitely still tons of instability and a major fueling factor for our storm development today. We're getting cape values that are in the 3000s, the mid 3000s, to possibly the upper 3000s, maybe even the low 4000s in some locations is definitely possible. So we have tons of instability with whatever wind shear we have. This is really going to fuel our significant hail threat, as well as the potential for tornadoes, possibly multiple tornadoes at a time today. This is really going to be a major fueling factor for storm development today. Taking a look at our wind shear, keep in mind our subtropical jet being around the 30 knots of mid-level flow, so we're not expecting to see significant wind shear, but we will definitely see sufficient wind shear for very strong, very large hail, and possibly multiple tornadoes today. We have wind shear values around storm development time after storms have continued for maybe 1 or 2 hours, possibly 3 hours. We have wind shear values that are in the 30 knots, possibly the weak 40 knots in some isolated locations. This is really going to allow for a very strong, very large hail, very large, significant hatch threat, especially with the amount of cape that we had. And then with this wind shear, with again the amount of cape that we had, the absolutely insane amounts of capes we had, this wind shear will definitely be more than sufficient for some multiple possibly tornadic development going at a time, but definitely sufficient for tornadic development. Again, we could possibly see multiple tornadoes today going at once, but it really all depends, but it could definitely be possible with this type of wind shear and instability. Now that I've told you the weather, please go down to the description and check out the socials for Project Gladiator. Join the Discord for any updates on Project Gladiator. Hopefully I will be able to supply you guys with updates on this strong, significant, severe weather event that could be possible later this week. Hopefully I can supply updates for that later this week, so stay tuned for that, and hopefully I will see you guys tomorrow with another forecast.